Khamzat Chimaev might not be a champion yet, but don't be mistaken, he's one of the most dangerous guys out there. The undefeated Chechen Wolf claims to be facing a shortage of competition as most of his potential opponents continue to dodge him. And while his loyal fan base thinks he's telling the truth, Paulo Costa and Belal Muhammad have their doubts. Keep watching this video for more on Boers and his growing frustration. First up, nobody wants to fight him. After a dominant performance against Kevin Holland at UFC 279, Khamzat Chimaev has solidified his standing in the welterweight division with a perfect record of 6 wins coming at 0 losses. He was absolutely ruthless and didn't even let Holland make a single move in the relatively easy and one-sided matchup. And considering how Alex Pereira got his shot at the middleweight title after 3 fights, Khamzat is perfectly lined up for a championship bout with 6 wins to his name. But with Leon Edwards set to defend the title against Kamaru Usman in a high-stakes rematch sometime in March, it looks like he'll have to wait a bit to dance with the champion. Where does that leave him though? Is he going to sit around and wait, or does he want to take his winning streak to 7 fights in a row? We did hear some stuff about how he'd be fighting 2-time title challenger Colby Covington in March, but the hype around that matchup seems to have died down. And with the current champion out of the picture, Chimaev has no opponent. He's facing the same problem all over again. Literally, no one wants to fight him. And we don't know if they're scared or what, but it's a bit odd how he's the only fighter in the UFC who claims to have no opponents. These boys, nobody wants to fight. You can tell he's growing frustrated with the lack of opponents. But after what he did to Kevin, we don't blame anyone for not wanting to fight him. Next, here's for not walking the talk. Have you guys noticed how almost every fighter has a bone to pick with Khamzat? Seriously, even fighters from different weight classes seem to have a problem with the Wolf. And if you ask us, it's probably because of his unshaken confidence. He can be a little cocky at times, but we can't blame him because he does exactly what he says. Or, in other words, Khamzat walks his talk. He talks about butchering his opponents inside the octagon. And except for that one fight against Gilbert Burns, the Wolf has done exactly that. But yeah, back to what we were saying earlier. Why does everyone talk trash about him? Israel Adesanya is probably the only guy who acknowledged him as a dangerous fighter. But apart from that, Kamaru Usman, Colby, and a handful of other guys talked trash and disappeared when he called them out for a fight. So his frustration is actually understandable if you think about it. Why do they even call him out in the first place if they have no intention whatsoever of fighting him? When it comes to the fight and signing the contract, they want to run away. And you know what sucks? As a true fan of the game, we would really like to see him go up against the top guys, the big shots, guys like Kamaru Usman, Leon Edwards, and Colby Covington, because what's the point if he's not being tested? Uncle Dana can't just keep giving him unranked or easy opponents just because the top guys don't want to fight him. It's about time one of these fighters signed the contract. Moving on, how does moving up a weight class sound? Since everyone in the welterweight division is trying their absolute best to dodge Khamzat, he's even willing to step it up a notch and fight in the middleweight division. This is literally a guy who took a fight because he had nothing better to do. Remember when he was on Fight Island? He had just won his first fight, and since he had nothing else to do on the island, he asked Uncle Dana to give him another fight and won that too. And since there's no action in the welterweight division right now, Chimaev is willing to take on the new middleweight champion, Alex Pereira. He's talked about fighting the Poatan on multiple occasions, but it seems like the Brazilian has no interest in taking the fight. We wouldn't say he's running away from the fight, but with the Adesanya rematch almost confirmed, it seems like Khamzat will have to sit this one out as well. And we'll get to the bit of how Costa and Belal don't believe him, but from the looks of it, he's actually right. The Colby fight has gone nowhere. Both divisions are caught up, and there's no one left to fight him. In our opinion, he's rightfully frustrated about the lack of opponents. Maybe the promotion would be willing to entertain a potential Paulo Costa versus Khamzat Chimaev fight if the eraser wasn't in a contractual dispute. But then we can also see Bobby Knuckles take on the Chechen Wolf Wolf at UFC 284. Now for already at camp. March is closing in, and the cards are filling up fast. We just told you about Whitaker and Costa being taken off UFC 284, but there seems to be no replacement as of yet. It's possible Khamzat might fight him, but at the same time, it presents many problems for the UFC. Think of it this way: whoever wins gets a legitimate shot at the title. Khamzat doesn't really need to prove himself because, well, he's undefeated. Bobby is the only fighter in the middleweight division worthy of a title shot, and it's the same for Chimaev in the welterweight division. If Uncle Dana does decide to fix this fight, what happens if Khamzat wins? Does he get a shot at Alex like he's been talking about? If yes, what of the welterweight division? Who's going to challenge the title holder if Khamzat has stepped up to middleweight? It's a tricky situation to be in, but considering how both the Wolf and Bobby Knuckles are at camp, the fight might just end up happening. The truth is, Khamzat needs an opponent. The UFC needs to come up with something, and handing him another unranked fighter won't be fair, especially when you look at how Pereira got his title shot after just 3 fights. Unpopular opinion, but does the UFC really need to be scheduling these immediate title rematches? They sort of clog up the division and make things less entertaining. Following up, does anyone still believe all this? We're not sure what changed in Costa, but ever since that whole Secret Juice episode, the Brazilian has taken social media by storm. He's sharing all sorts of funny memes and jokes about the UFC and fighters, and if we're being honest, we really like this version of him. The Eraser even had an altercation with Khamzat at the UFC's Performance Center, where both men had to be held back to prevent a brawl. Costa has been shooting down Chimaev on his social media ever since, and while it's super entertaining, the former middleweight title contender has some harsh opinions about him not being able to find an opponent. Does anyone even believe in this bullshit? Well, to be honest, a lot of people do, including us, because we did the math, and both divisions are held up right now. Let's step back for a second and look at things from a wider perspective. Khamzat deserves a title shot. He's entitled. The only reason he was willing to take on Colby Covington was that he didn't want to sit idle. He wanted to train and fight, and there's no such thing as sitting around and waiting for a title fight in his dictionary. But fighting anyone else at this point, which doesn't further his case for an immediate shot at the title, would be pretty unfair. That's why he needs to fight a legitimate opponent, a big name, not someone like Kevin Lee, who got busted for Adderall a while back, calling him out to a fight. What does that even do for his case? Up next, step up then. We understand that Paulo Costa is currently in a contractual dispute with Uncle Dana, but what's Bilal going on about here? He's a top welterweight and still isn't willing to step up and fight Khamzat. All he's doing is trying to take shots at him for saying he has no opponents. Is Bilal forgetting that he's literally the reason why the Czech and Wolf is saying that? He jokingly named a couple of fighters like Nate Diaz, Chris Levin, and Bret Hart, claiming these are the guys who aren't willing to fight him. Step up, Bilal. It is your time to shine. It's the perfect opportunity to push for the title, and all he does is take shots at him. And don't get us wrong here, we think the 34-year-old is an exceptional fighter since he's at the number 4 spot in the welterweight rankings, but this seems kind of below the belt because all Khamzat is asking for is an opponent, and Bilal has everything to step up and take him on. Even Dana White has said it on multiple occasions. He has a lot of trouble finding legitimate opponents for him because everyone is so scared. Paddy the Baddy has a tendency to gain a significant amount of weight between fights, which limits his ability to fight on a regular basis. This is Khamzat Chimaev, ladies and gentlemen, a straight up killer feared throughout the entire promotion. Last but not least, he's coming up one way or the other. The UFC can unintentionally delay Khamzat's rise at the promotion, but whether MMA fans like it or not, he's destined for greatness. Mark our words, people. He's going to be a UFC champion one day. There's no stopping him. If Dana fails to book a fight in March, then both divisions will have a champion, allowing Khamzat to pick and choose who he wants to fight for the title. This is just what we think, but it would be much more interesting if he moved up and fought guys like Pereira and Adesanya. But that's it from our side, folks. So what do you think? Will the UFC be able to schedule something for the Czech and Wolf in March? Let us know in the comments below. Remember, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos in the future. Thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you next time.